What would you do if one day a voicemail told you your car had been impounded and was about to be auctioned off? I almost deleted the message until I heard 3 words: Camry. 3 weeks. The truth? They didn't just tow it, they transferred the title out of my name without my knowledge. The person listed as the new owner? My father. I'm Claire. I used to believe staying silent kept the peace, but now I know silence was their tool for control. In this video, you'll see exactly how I turn things around, with legal evidence, a fraud investigator, and the strength to finally say enough. Even if you've spent your whole life being the easy one, you can reclaim your voice. They forged my signature on tax documents I signed in trust, then sold my car to fund my sister's pageant dress. I gathered every receipt, every message, and took it to the police. Today, that case is under investigation for financial fraud. If you've ever felt used under the name of family, don't skip this. Because sometimes, healing doesn't come with an apology. It starts the moment you take back your story. Before we dive into the story, I'd love to get to know you a little better. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. That way, I can send you a special shout-out. Now, let's begin our story together. I nearly skipped the voicemail. It came in at 4:37 p.m. on a Tuesday, right between my 3rd client call and the moment I finally remembered to microwave the same cup of coffee for the 4th time. I was elbow deep in last-minute edits to a pitch deck when my phone buzzed beside a half-eaten salad. I didn't even glance at it until the familiar vibration repeated 5 minutes later. I almost deleted the message on autopilot until I heard the words, tow yard, and Camry. The receptionist's voice was monotone, the kind that sounded like it had repeated the same script for 15 years. This is just a courtesy call regarding the 2020 silver Toyota Camry, license plate ending in 9124. It's been on our lot for 3 weeks. If not claimed by Friday, it will be auctioned. Thank you. My thumb hovered above the screen. I hit play again. 3 weeks? Auctioned? The Camry was supposed to be parked in my parents' driveway back in Littleton. Safe, untouched. Mom had offered, insisted really, to keep it for a few months while I was swamped with that big campaign. Her words, the campaign was real. I was 6 days from pitching the biggest nonprofit rebrand of my career, but the Camry was mine. I'd bought it outright 2 years ago with my own bonus, clean title, no payments. It wasn't just a car. It was the first thing I'd ever owned that no one else had touched first. I dropped my fork, wiped my fingers on a napkin, and typed the number from the voicemail into my phone. A man with a raspy voice confirmed the car's make and model, read off the VIN, and said, "Towed from a residential driveway. Lot fee is $75 a day. Who authorized the tow?" A pause. "Ma'am, it was reported by the registered owner." I blinked. "I'm the registered owner." Another pause. Then a shuffle of paper. "Says here the vehicle was transferred in May." I sat back, hard. "Transferred to who?" "I'm sorry, we can't disclose that. You'll need to contact the DMV for title details." I clicked off and opened the DMV site in a separate tab. The apartment felt too quiet. Just the faint hum of the ceiling fan and the endless Slack pings I was ignoring. I submitted a title lookup request, input my VIN, and waited. It took 3 minutes. The screen refreshed. The current title holder was listed as Richard Morgan, my father. I stared at the name, then at the date. May 12th, 2023. I hadn't signed anything in May. I hadn't been home in May. I hadn't even seen my parents since March. Mom sent a birthday card with glitter on the envelope that still sat unopened in my kitchen drawer. I scrolled further. Title transferred. Release of ownership signed and dated by Claire Morgan. My heart thudded like I'd stepped off a curb I hadn't seen. I got up, opened the desk drawer under my printer, and pulled out my file folder. I flipped through my maintenance records, smog check reports, insurance policies. Everything was there, except the original title. I picked up the phone and called my mother. "Claire, sweetheart, are you eating enough?" Her voice was sugary, like she'd been waiting to say that exact line. "Hi, Mom, where's my car?" She hesitated. "What do you mean?" "I just got a call from a tow yard. They've had it for 3 weeks." "Oh," she said, like I'd mentioned the weather. "Well, it was just sitting there. We needed the driveway clear for Sierra's fittings." "Sierra's fittings?" "For the pageant, remember? She made regionals. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." "And the car?" My voice was low, flat. Mom sighed like I was being difficult. "We sold it, just privately. It wasn't a big deal. It went to a good cause." My mouth went dry. "What cause?" "She needed the dress, Claire. You know how important image is in these things. She's worked so hard." "You sold my car," I said slowly, "to buy a dress." "Don't be dramatic. It was just one dress. For her future." I didn't remember hanging up. I just found myself staring at my screen, fingers curled around the edge of the desk. Slack pinged again. 3 unread messages. My pitch deck blinked in the background, still waiting for the last slide. I opened my spam folder, scrolled. Buried among newsletters and shipping alerts was one subject line that caught my eye. "Private sale confirmation, signed by Claire Morgan." I clicked it. There it was. A PDF attachment, a scanned copy of a release form, my signature, dated May 12th. Except I hadn't signed it, not on May 12th. Not ever. "Dear friend, what would you do if you were in my shoes? I bet you can't guess what's coming next. But before we go any further, drop a 5 in the comments if you're still with me, because what happens next might just leave you speechless. The Camry wasn't the first thing they took from me. It was just the first thing I reported. I reminded myself of that as I wrapped both hands around a cardboard to-go cup, hoping its warmth would anchor me to the moment. Outside the plate glass window of Red Brick Cafe, a gust rattled early fallen leaves along the sidewalk. September always announced itself in Denver with that restless swirl of gold and rust. Inside, espresso hissed, spoons clinked, and nobody noticed the woman in the back corner scrolling through a lifetime of Venmo receipts. How many times did I just... "Let it go," I whispered. The screen offered no answer, just a glowing archive of small withdrawals that added up to something weighty. Sierra's rent once, Sierra's emergency eyelash course, Sierra's refundable deposit for a short-lived pop-up boutique. The emojis she'd tacked onto each request, sparkles, hearts, a crying, laughing face, felt like confetti tossed over a quiet theft. My phone vibrated. Sierra's name stretched across the display, her selfie still set to a glamorous filter that powdered away any trace of frustration or doubt. I hesitated, then answered. Her face filled the screen. Big lashes, perfect lighting, the faint echo of music in the background. "Claire, hey," she sang as if nothing had happened. "Busy day?" "You could say that. Sierra, did you really tell Mom and Dad I'd be fine without the car?" She tilted her head, expression innocent. "You're acting like it was a Maserati. It was a Camry. You'll get another one." "I bought that car. It mattered to me." She offered a sympathetic smile the way influencers sell teeth-whitening kits. "I can't get another chance at state finals. You know how pageant points work. It's all or nothing, sis." "Pageant points," I repeated, tasting the phrase like something sour. Sierra sighed, bored already. "Look, I don't have time for guilt trips. If you want me to pay you back, fine. I'll send you something when my sponsorship comes in." Before I could respond, the call dropped. Her end, not mine. A bubble popped at the top of my phone. Sierra is now Do Not Disturb. I set the phone face down and opened my planner. Across from marketing timelines and print deadlines, I scribbled a new header. Things I let slide. As the list grew, my handwriting tightened. The $1,200 seed money for Sierra's fashion blog that fizzled after 3 posts, the 6 months of her health club membership I covered, just until she landed a stable job, the joint streaming accounts that somehow only my card funded. Dad always called those moments family flexibility. Funny how flexible only stretched one way. Later, back at my apartment, the late afternoon light slanted across the floorboards, turning dust into tiny constellations. I curled onto the rug with a shoebox of tax documents, the same box Dad had handed me in March. "Sign where I flagged," he'd said, pointing to neon tabs. "Just standard deductions. Trust me." I had trusted him. It was easier than reading every line, easier than questioning a man who spent my childhood fixing faucets at midnight so we could afford birthday parties. I slid the stapled packet free. The top sheet read, "Supplemental Property Statement." Harmless enough. But a line lower down made my pulse thump. Vehicle Transfer Authority. Principal signature on file. Vehicle Transfer Authority. I flipped to the signature page. There it was, my name in brisk cursive. The Y drooped straight, not looped the way I always wrote it. Dad must have forgotten that detail. I'd initialed other lines myself that day, distracted by back-to-back zooms and his reassuring pat on my shoulder. He must have slipped this extra page beneath them, counting on my hurry, counting on my love. A wave of heat rose behind my eyes. I thought of something Aunt Vanessa once told me at a family barbecue, her voice low amid the sizzle of burgers. "They'll wrap guilt in ribbon and call it love. Don't mistake the packaging for the gift." Back then I'd laughed, half understanding. Now her words landed with a thud. I stood, joint stiff, and crossed to the fridge. A lone, sticky note clung to the stainless steel, curling at the corners. I'd written it months ago after a tough quarterly review, then stopped seeing it, like a scuff on familiar flooring. Don't confuse silence with agreement. I read it out loud for the first time, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. A sharp knock startled me. 2 quick raps, official in their certainty. I opened the door to a woman in a navy jacket, a badge swung from a lanyard at her chest. "Ms. Claire Morgan?" she asked. "Yes. I'm Officer Laura Kim with the Denver Police Department's fraud unit. We received your complaint regarding a potentially forged vehicle release." She offered a calm, almost kind smile. "Do you have a few minutes to talk?" Behind her, dusk pooled in the hallway, carrying the first real chill of autumn. I exhaled, stepped aside, and gestured her in. As she crossed the threshold, the sticky note fluttered, then fell to the kitchen tile, landing face up, its message clear as the evening sky. I used to ask, for explanations, for fairness. These days, I just keep the evidence. Officer Kim met me outside a corner 7-Eleven on a gray September afternoon, the kind that smells faintly of rain even when the pavement stays dry. She was balancing 2 coffee cups in a cardboard tray. The gesture felt almost neighborly, except for the badge clipped to her belt. "One for the trouble you didn't ask for," she said, handing me the extra cup. My fingers tightened around the lid. "I'm getting used to trouble," I told her, though I wasn't sure that was true. We sat on a concrete ledge near the newspaper rack. Kim flipped open a slim notebook, nodded for me to begin. I described the forged power of attorney page, the missing title, the Camry now gathering dust behind a chain-link fence. When I faltered, she filled the silence with precise questions, never letting the conversation drift into pity. Finally, she closed the notebook. "We'll need clear scans of every signature you've actually made on vehicle or tax documents. If the handwriting examiner sees a consistent loop in your Ys and a sharp break in the forgery, that helps, and I'll need a formal affidavit stating the car was taken without your knowledge." I should have felt lighter. Instead, a new weight settled in. This had stopped being a family argument. I was building a case. That evening, my apartment looked like the back office of a failing store. Folders open, sticky notes forming pastel shingles across the coffee table, my living room lamp dragged closer for better light. I found the original purchase receipt buried inside a sleeve of warranty papers from 3 years ago, still smelling faintly of dealership leather seats. My signature there showed the way I always wrote my name. The Y in Mary, my middle name, swooped low, almost like a fishhook. On the forged title transfer, the Y hung straight, no curve at all. Dad must have forgotten that detail too. I snapped photos of both documents under the lamp glare, then emailed them to Officer Kim. She replied 10 minutes later, fast even for a detective, confirming they were clear enough for the analyst. It was nearing midnight, but the quiet pushed me toward one more task. I opened the phone app, scrolled to Dad's number, and hit record before I could reconsider. "Hi, Dad," I began, soft but steady. "I know what you did with the Camry paperwork. The DMV has your name on the title, but I never signed the release. You have 48 hours to come clean. Otherwise, the investigation moves forward without your side of the story." I paused, hearing only my own breathing. I was dependable, because I trusted you. That ended when the car left the driveway. Good night. My thumb hovered, then I tapped send. No tremble, no second take. The next morning, I drove to the DMV, the same cinder block building where I'd waited in line for an hour to register the Camry the day I bought it. The fluorescent lights still flickered. The same poster about Real ID still curled at the edges. At the counter, a clerk with tired eyes tapped my VIN into her keyboard, printed a certified copy of the transfer, and slid it beneath the plexiglass. "That'll be $9, she said, voice flat. I paid, added the receipt to my thickening folder, and thanked her. She didn't look up. Outside, I photographed the new document on my hood, texting the image to Kim. Within seconds, her reply buzzed. "Perfect. Let's draft the affidavit tomorrow." When tomorrow came, we met in her small office downtown. She read the statement aloud so I could catch any errors, then passed the pen across the desk. I reread every line, the dates, the VIN, the description of events, before signing. The pen felt heavier than it should have, or maybe I felt lighter once the signature dried. Kim slid the paper into a manila envelope. "This locks your complaint," she said. "If mediation fails, we move to formal charges." "Thank you," I said. It sounded too small, so I tried again. "Thank you for treating it like it matters." "It matters," she said simply, and gathered the rest of the file. Back home, dusk leaked through the blinds. My planner lay open to next week, an entire column labeled "Final Pitch Due." Yet my eyes kept drifting to the phone. 10 minutes passed, then 20. No call from Dad, no apology, no explanation of how strength meant silence. I finally showered and climbed into bed, setting the phone to vibrate. Sleep came fitfully, a spool of half-dreams unrolling behind my eyelids. At 5:30, the screen lit up once, twice, then again. Numbers and names tumbling across the glass. Mom, Dad, Sierra. I rolled over trying to catch the time when a fourth alert shone brighter than the rest. 303-555-0198, unknown caller. The buzzing stopped. Darkness returned. I lay still, heartbeat loud against the quiet apartment walls, waiting to see who would speak next. I used to think justice would feel loud, like a slammed door, a courtroom echo, something final. But pressing charges didn't feel like justice. It felt like finally putting down a match, after years of letting it burn in my hand. The fall market downtown had always been our tradition. Mom loved the handmade soaps. Dad lingered near the kettle corn stands. Sierra took pictures of everything for Instagram, but this year I walked it alone. Pumpkins sat stacked by the curb. The scent of warm cider floated from one of the booths. Families bustled past me, laughing, nudging each other over what pie to bring to dinner. I moved through the crowd like a shadow, present but untethered. My phone buzzed. I hesitated, then checked it. A barrage of messages. Mom, you're tearing the family apart. Sierra, do you even care what this is doing to me? I'm crying every night. Dad, call me. We can fix this. Quietly. I slid the phone into my coat pocket without answering. At brunch the next day, I tried to act normal. Our team had just wrapped a campaign early, so the mood at the table was light. Someone ordered mimosas. Someone else shared a meme. Then Jenna from HR turned to me. Hey, I heard about your situation. That's rough. My fork paused mid-air. Thanks, I said, but I'd rather not talk about it here. She nodded, embarrassed. Of course, sorry. Later that evening, Vanessa texted me a photo of a bakery pastry, one of those flaky apple tarts I hadn't had since I was a teenager. Remember these? Sometimes justice is just skipping the family table. That hit me harder than any court filing. I put my phone down and exhaled. Then Officer Kim called. "Claire, I wanted to give you a quick update," she said. "We've escalated the case. It's now being reviewed for financial fraud. The forged documents, the misuse of the power of attorney, they're substantial." I didn't say anything for a second. "We'll keep you updated," she added gently. "You did the right thing." After the call with Officer Kim, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. Not working, not cleaning, just sitting. The envelope lay open beside my elbow, the subpoena's official seal catching the lamplight. I wanted to feel something clearer. Relief, perhaps. But instead, I felt a hollow knowing, the kind that hums behind your ribs like a bruise you forgot you had. I opened my laptop not to scroll or distract, but to write. Not a journal entry, not even a letter, just a document I titled "For the Record." I listed the dates: when I first left the car with my parents, when I got the tow yard call, when I confronted Mom. I included screenshots of the texts, copies of the old Venmo payments I'd sent Sierra over the years, labeled bailout, urgent dress, flights. I paused on one from 2021 that simply said, "For Dad." No details, just trust. I saved the file, backed it up, emailed it to myself, and then to a friend who once interned at a legal aid clinic. She'd know what to do. Before bed, I stood at my fridge reading that faded sticky note. "Don't confuse silence with agreement." I'd written it in a moment of clarity months ago, after a heated work meeting where I'd finally spoken up. But tonight it meant something different. It felt like a line drawn in sand. The next morning, a surprise visitor, my landlord, Jim, knocking to check on a plumbing issue. He paused mid-sentence when he saw the envelope on my table. "Court stuff?" he asked, not nosy, just neighborly. "Yeah," I said, voice even. He nodded. "Hope it works out how you need." Then, like he always did, he reached into the pocket of his flannel and pulled out a peppermint. "For the nerves." I took it. It was the first time I'd accepted one in months. Later that day, I met Vanessa for coffee. She brought me a scarf, soft teal wool, something she said she found at a street stall in Santa Fe. "Sometimes warmth comes from outside," she said, tucking it around my neck like she used to when I was little, "until it can come from inside again." I almost cried, but instead I asked, "Do you think they ever loved me the way they love her?" Vanessa didn't answer right away. She stirred her tea. "I think they loved what you gave them, and I think that's different from loving you." That landed somewhere deep. When I got home, I noticed the voicemail icon blinking. It was Richard. His voice sounded tired, rehearsed. "We can't undo the past, Claire, but you don't have to make this harder than it already is. You know we're family." I deleted it before he finished. That night, I walked the market again. Not to remember, not to reclaim, just to walk. I passed a couple holding hands, laughing over cider. A street musician played "Stand By Me," and I realized I had stood by them for so long I hadn't noticed I was standing alone. Back home, I curled up on the couch, subpoena on the coffee table, scarf still around my neck. I wasn't sure what came next, but I knew what wouldn't. Silence, guilt, or going back. And for the first time, that felt like more than enough. The diner hadn't changed much since I was a teenager. Same cracked linoleum floors, same sticky booths with frayed red vinyl. Even the waitress looked familiar. Her name tag said Connie, and she poured my coffee like we hadn't all gotten older, like time had looped back on itself. I slid into the far corner booth before they arrived. I needed to face the door. It was mid-October, the kind of gray, uncommitted day that couldn't decide if it wanted to rain. I didn't order food. My stomach had been a fist all morning. The court date was in 6 days. This was a final courtesy meeting, my gesture toward civility. One last chance, I told myself, though I wasn't sure for what. Linda walked in first, clutching her purse like it might run away. Her eyes were already glossy. Richard followed, expression blank, as if this were a trip to the hardware store. They sat down across from me without speaking. Connie asked if they wanted anything. They both declined. "I miss our Sunday calls," Mom said, breaking the silence. Her voice wavered like she'd practiced sounding just sad enough. "We used to talk for hours. Do you remember when you moved into your first place in Boulder? You called every night that week." I didn't answer. I stared at the napkin dispenser until she fell quiet. Richard cleared his throat. "Claire, we didn't come here to rehash everything. What's done is done, but we can still find a resolution." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a white envelope. He slid it across the table, fingers barely touching it. "There's $10,000 in there. Cash. It's not everything, but it's something. We make this go away and no one needs to testify. No embarrassment, no family fallout." I didn't touch the envelope. Instead, I pulled out something of my own, a folded, grease-stained receipt from the glove box of my car. It was dated 3 years ago. 2020 Toyota Camry, paid in full. My name was listed as the buyer. "You didn't buy it," I said quietly. "You don't get to offer it back." Linda sniffled. "We never meant to hurt you. Sierra was in a difficult place. She had that internship in New York. She had a shopping spree on Melrose and a private stylist for a week. Don't rewrite this." Richard bristled. "We took care of you. Your entire life, Claire. Don't act like you didn't benefit from this family." I reached into my purse and pulled out another piece of paper, one of the birthday cards from when I turned 18. I'd found it in an old shoebox last night. Inside, in my father's blocky handwriting, it read, "You make us proud by never causing problems." I slid it across the table. "You raised me to think silence was virtue," I said, "that keeping the peace was more important than telling the truth. But this isn't peace, it's control." He stared at the card for a long second, then shoved it aside like it was trash. Mom fumbled in her bag and produced something else, an old family album. It was dog-eared and bulky, stuffed with Polaroids and birthday snapshots. She opened it halfway and turned it toward me. "We thought maybe, if you remembered the good times—" I didn't look at the pictures. I didn't need to. "You're not sorry," I said, standing up. "You're scared." Richard's jaw tightened. "You're walking away from your own family." "No," I replied. "I'm walking away from people who used my name like a credit line and called it love." I left the envelope, the card, and the photo album on the table. The bell above the door jingled as I stepped outside into the wind, and there she was, Sierra. Leaning against my car like she had a right to be there, arms crossed, sunglasses too big for the overcast day. Her expression was unreadable. "I just want to talk," she said. I didn't answer. I unlocked the car and got in. As I started the engine, she moved toward the passenger side, but I hit the lock before she could grab the handle. From my playlist, a song from 10 years ago drifted through the speakers, something I used to blast while driving to internships she never knew I worked. I turned it up, loud enough to drown her out, loud enough to remember who I used to be. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Sierra stood alone, framed by the fading blue of the diner's neon sign. I didn't feel powerful. I felt clean, like rinsing off the last of someone else's lies. I didn't go home right away. I drove past my exit and kept going until the highway thinned and the buildings gave way to fields. I pulled into a rest stop, one of those old ones with cracked picnic tables and faded vending machines, and just sat there, letting the engine tick in the silence. I thought about all the versions of me that had swallowed discomfort, rationalized bad behavior, smiled to keep the peace. I thought about the times I'd lent Sierra money without a second thought, the times I didn't ask questions because I didn't want to seem ungrateful. I wasn't proud of the silence I'd maintained all these years. But today wasn't silence. Today was a sentence spoken clearly with no apology. My phone buzzed again. Messages from numbers I recognized and ones I didn't. I didn't open them. Not yet. The road ahead was still mine, and for once I wasn't driving it for anyone else's comfort. I took a sip of lukewarm water from the cup holder and leaned back. Through the windshield, a crow landed on a nearby trash can, picked something up, then flew off, effortless and sure. I almost laughed. Sometimes flight didn't mean escape. Sometimes it meant choosing sky over cage. When I finally put the car in gear again, the road welcomed me like an old friend. And this time, I didn't look back. The package was small, wrapped in pink paper, sitting on my doorstep like gilt with a ribbon. I didn't touch it at first, just stared at the delicate bow and the familiar cursive on the tag. My mother's. For Claire, it read, the ink slightly smudged, as if someone had hesitated before finishing the last stroke. I stepped over it and went inside. The apartment smelled different now, cleaner, calmer. I had finally thrown out the dying eucalyptus bundle that had clung to the back of the bathroom door and swapped out the broken coffee maker. Even the lighting felt warmer. I didn't realize how much chaos had crept in until I cleared a space for peace. Earlier that day, I had taken the stand in court. It wasn't dramatic. No shaking hands or sobbing testimonies. Just me, answering questions clearly, evenly. Officer Kim sat nearby, a silent presence of reassurance. The prosecutor walked me through the paperwork, how the title had been transferred without my consent, how the signature didn't match, how the power of attorney had been concealed inside a bundle of family tax documents. I spoke without looking toward the defense table. I didn't need to see my parents to know their expressions. I already knew the lines of disappointment, the clenched jaw, the eyes darting for sympathy. When it was over, I stepped outside into the cold. The wind had picked up. Early November in Denver meant red noses and hands buried in coat pockets. I zipped my jacket and started walking toward the parking lot when I heard her voice. "Claire," Sierra said, standing stiffly near a column. Her arms were crossed over her chest, her boots too thin for the weather. I stopped, said nothing. "You could have handled this differently," she said, softer now, not quite an apology, but shaded with exhaustion. I tilted my head slightly. "So could you." She opened her mouth again, but I didn't wait. I had no desire to rake through the same conversation we'd had, unspoken, 1,000 times before. By the time I reached home, the pink package was waiting. I picked it up. Light. Probably something meaningless made to feel sentimental. One of Mom's famous forgive and forget gestures. A framed photo, a music box. A letter that said, "I'm sorry," without ever admitting what for. I turned it in my hands. The tape was cleanly folded at the corners. She had wrapped it herself. That much was clear. Vanessa's voice echoed in my mind. "You'll know you're healing when you stop hoping they'll apologize." I weighed it once more. Then, without another thought, I walked to the kitchen, flipped open the trash lid, and dropped it inside. The ribbon unfurled a little on the way down. I could just make out the words, "Love, always." I didn't look back. Instead, I pulled out the notebook Vanessa had given me last Christmas. The cover read, "Reclaim your narrative." At the time, I thought it was cheesy. Now it felt earned. I sat at the kitchen table, the one I had cleaned for the first time in months, and wrote, "This wasn't revenge, it was restoration." Then I opened my laptop. The screen glowed pale in the dim light, cursor blinking like it was waiting for me to reclaim space. I created a new file and titled it, "How to Own the Life They Tried to Control." The keys felt steady under my fingers. For once, I didn't second-guess each word. I wasn't writing for them. I wasn't writing to prove anything. I was writing because I could. Outside, the wind whistled low against the windows, but inside, the silence felt full, like breathing for the first time in a long time. Maybe that's what peace is. Not forgetting. Not forgiving. Just finally deciding the story belongs to you. Some packages are better left unopened, not out of bitterness, but because we've finally learned we don't need what's inside. That pink-wrapped box on my doorstep was never really about love. It was about control, dressed up as sentiment. Sometimes choosing peace means walking away without needing the last word. Healing isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet, like cleaning your apartment after a storm. Like starting a new file on a laptop and knowing, this time, the story is truly yours to write. If this story spoke to you in any way, I'd love to hear what it stirred up. What would you have done with the package? And if this story spoke to you and you believe in quiet victories, personal growth, and stories that matter, make sure to subscribe to the channel. There's so much more ahead, and I'd be honored to share it with you.